Boko Haram releases 21 of more than 200 kidnapped Chibok girls to the Nigerian government. How climate change is impacting our health, especially children. And a Chinese construction worker becomes an internet sensation for his jaw-dropping fitness routines. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin with two major stories. As the civil war grinds on in Yemen, the U.S. military launched strikes in the Middle East nation in retaliation for missile launches against a U.S. warship. We'll have more on that story shortly. But first, there is good news coming out of West Africa, where after tense negotiations brokered by the International Red Cross and the Swiss government, Nigerian officials say Boko Haram has freed 21 of more than 200 Chibok girls kidnapped by the terrorist group in April 2014. VOA House correspondent Ibrahim Ahmed has our story.
Borno State Deputy Governor Usman Durkwa says Nigerian security forces handed over the girls, who were then transferred to the capital Abuja for medical checks and to be reunited with their parents. They were among more than 270 girls abducted from a secondary school in 2014. Shown here in a Boko Haram video, the girls have been at the center of several efforts to negotiate their release as part of a swap for militant prisoners. Less famous than the Chibok girls are thousands of other civilians captured by Boko Haram, some of whom have escaped as Nigerian troops advance toward the borders with Niger and Chad. This young woman, who gave her name only as Mariam, says she was 16 when she was kidnapped from the town of Michika 2 years ago and forcibly married to a Boko Haram fighter. In her escape, she says she walked 3 days through the Sambisa forest before being picked up by Nigerian troops.
I know that if they caught me along the way, they would hurt me.
Alhaji Kawa was detained twice by Boko Haram when the group captured Bama.
They went away with my oldest daughter, who had just finished secondary school, 2 other daughters, and my son. They said that anybody found in the town is their slave, whether a child or an adult, male or female. They own everybody. That is what they said. You don't even have the right or the freedom to open your mouth and ask them where the children are.
Officials say all of the civilians who have escaped Boko Haram are screened by military intelligence before being given rations and moved into camps for displaced civilians. Ibrahim Ahmed, VOA News, Washington.
Well, the U.S. military says it struck 3 raider sites in Yemen Thursday in response to missile launches from territory controlled by Houthi rebels that targeted U.S. Navy destroyer. The U.S. Navy released video of the launch of the Tomahawk cruise missile from the destroyer USS Nitze. The Pentagon says the missiles targeted raider sites along Yemen's Red Sea coast and north of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Now, the statement says destroying the raider sites will degrade the ability to track and target ships in the future. A Pentagon spokesman described the strike as self-defense after a missile fired in the Red Sea on Wednesday targeted the destroyer USS Mason. The ship was not hit and there were no injuries. Meanwhile, an airstrike on a funeral gathering widely blamed on Saudi-led warplanes poses more trouble for a Western-backed Arab campaign against Yemen's Houthis that has long been criticized for civilian losses. Now, the White House has launched an immediate review of its support for the 18-month-old military push after planes hit mourners at a community hall in Sana'a last Saturday, killing 140 people. That's according to one UN estimate. Mohaldeen Faoud has this report from Sana'a.
It was a funeral that became a funeral of mourners. There is still hope to find mourners who survived inside one of the halls that is considered to be one of the largest convention centers in Yemen. At least 140 people were killed and more than 500 were badly injured. It was the latest in an increasing number of attacks targeting places commonly used by civilians. Saudi Arabia is requesting an inquiry into this matter. Whatever the target of this attack, the result has been the high cost paid by civilians. Hospitals in Sana'a city, the capital of Yemen, are filled with wounded people, and they are making urgent pleas for blood donation, as hospitals are trying to manage without medical supplies. We were inside the hall giving our condolences, and suddenly the first missile hit inside, followed by the second one. People were killed, and I was in a coma, but awoke at hospital. A country with 26 million citizens, with some of the highest rates of poverty in the Arab world, is dealing with a barrage of attacks on civilian homes. People who had survived from poverty and lack of medical care could now be killed at any time by a missile. Citizens are appealing to stop this disaster. I appeal everyone who has the power, including all human rights organizations, to make a plea to stop this attack on men, women, and children. Due to this crisis in Yemen, people were forced from their homes and now find themselves displaced. One such example is the Dadaab camp for people displaced by the airstrikes. People flee to this camp to survive. However, they were confronted by a potential killer at the camp, a lack of food and sanitary surroundings. In addition, the children are suffering from malnutrition. Winter is coming, and the camp residents are suffering from the cold weather and pleading for help from international organizations.
Well, for more discussion on Yemen, VOA's Caliban joins me live via Skype from the Pentagon. Kala, now this strike, this Thursday strike, is the first really very direct strike against the Houthi-controlled territories there. What is the significance here?
Well, that's right, Vincent. I think the significance is this is a very clear message from the Pentagon that no one in Yemen should be targeting any ships that are in international waters. This is significant because normally the United States targets AQAP, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Up until now, that's who they've been targeting in Yemen. The shift was made because this was given a specific instance to protect and defend the ships there. It was authorized by the president. It was done on the recommendation of the Secretary of Defense. And as you and I were talking about yesterday, the United States is not at war with the Houthis. The United States is at war with Al-Qaeda and with the Islamic State. So there had to be a special authorization to allow them to strike these specific areas that were a part of the strikes, the attempted missile launch against the USS Mason.
And indeed, there was that emphasis on the limited nature of this strike. But, Carla, we have reports now that Iran has also sent warships to that region. Is there a danger here? Is anybody talking about a danger of an escalation of hostilities, especially among the major players there, the big powers?
Well, U.S. officials that I've spoken with here are telling me that the United States military does not want or desire any additional role in this conflict in Yemen. That is not the desire. That is why these were so limited, and that is why they were proportional, as one U.S. official told me, to what had happened to the USS Mason. They targeted these 3 radar sites because those were the ones that painted the USS Mason and allowed those missiles to try to target them. So when everything was finished up and when they were able to stop these missiles from hitting, that was what they wanted to do, send a small message and no more.
Carla, thank you very much for your reporting.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's our viewers Caliban reporting live via Skype from the Pentagon. Now, Kenyan officials, citing national security concerns, are planning to shut the Dadaab refugee camp by the end of the year. Now, the camp is home to nearly 300,000 people, mostly from Somalia. Kenya has agreed, along with Somalia and the UN Refugee Agency, to a policy of voluntary repatriations, but the plan is already hitting some snags. In part 1 of our look at this issue, VOA's Jill Craig reports from Dadaab.
Here at the Dadaab airstrip, passengers are leaving the only home some of them have known for decades. If someone is complaining about you, you can't say, I have to stay in his house. So you have to decide to leave his house. So Kenya is now going to choose Dadaab, and we have to leave Dadaab.
Flights have been taking people to Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, but repatriations to the Jubaland region were canceled in August after authorities there said they couldn't handle the newcomers. And so some refugees bound for Jubaland are waiting in this transit camp. They say they have already sold or transferred their homes and belongings, and that camp officials have taken all their documents. So now they wait in limbo. Mahmoud Ali Abdi came to Dadaab when it opened in 1991, after he fled violence in Mogadishu.
There's no place to go back to in the camp. People have taken our houses. Since they've said that they cannot repatriate us, we would like to trek by foot to our country.
And some, like 24-year-old Mohammed Abdullahi Jamale, have never actually been to Somalia.
So I don't feel like the decision was nice to somebody like me who was born in the camps. And I don't feel like going. I want to stay here in Kenya. Even if we are forced, I want to die here, pretending to be a Kenyan.
Abdullahi Mohammed Aden went back to Somalia in May before deciding to return to Dadaab.
I went to Jubaland, where I'm from. It's not a place I can go now because it's under the control of militias. The place we went, there was no security, no health, no education, no water. It was a tough place. At night, armed men would come to you. They would tell you to give them what you have. We had to leave.
But the uncertainty over the camp's future is impacting even those who have decided to stay in Dadaab for now.
We do feel that our business is at risk. You cannot bring more goods. There is no one to buy since day after day the numbers are decreasing.
For these refugees, living in Dadaab has meant free education, free health care, and good security.
I'm not ready to go back to Somalia. I have children in school, but there are many people who are ready to go back to their country. And the repatriation that was stopped has become another problem for them.
But for those who decided to leave for Mogadishu, they've packed up their belongings, taken a $150 cash grant from UNHCR, and boarded their flight, unsure of what they will find when they land in Somalia. Jill Craig, VOA News, Dadaab, Kenya.
Well, it's time for a health report, and here is with us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu with a look at a possible connection between climate change and your health. Lino.
That's right, Vincent. The United States is celebrating its first inaugural Children's Environmental Health Day on October 13th. Observers say it's an opportunity to bring forth the impact of climate change on people's health and children in particular. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency says rising temperatures may decrease air quality by increasing the formation of ground-level ozone. Ozone exposure may lead to a number of adverse health effects in children, such as a shortness of breath, chest pain when inhaling deeply, wheezing and coughing, temporary decreases in lung function, and lower respiratory tract infections. The Allergy and Asthma Network and Mom's Clean Air Fund is announcing a partnership to promote an educational initiative on the connection between climate change and asthma. For more on the subject, we have two guests with us today. Molly Roach is the Public Policy Director of Mom's Clean Air Force. Also joining us is Charmaine Anderson, Director of Advocacy, Allergy and Asthma Network. Ladies, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
So simply put, what is climate change? We hear about climate change, but how can we simplify it and understand it?
So because of human activity, we have dramatically rising levels of carbon dioxide and other heat-trapping gases in our atmosphere. And what that's doing is that's increasing global average temperatures, it's melting ice sheets and raising sea levels around the world. And that's leading to health impacts right now and predicted health impacts in the future.
And now you are looking at specifically children's, at least for this special partnership that you've signed between both organizations. Tell us about the effect of climate change on children's health, especially when it comes to asthma.
So Mom's Clean Air Force and Allergy and Asthma Network, we're very concerned about asthma. Asthma is a huge problem. In the U.S., there are more than 6 million children with the disease. That's more than 8% of all children, and in some urban areas, it's as high as 15% or higher of all children. So this is a major health threat to children. And climate change is having complex processes on our ecology and our environment. But many of those things that climate change is doing to our environment, those things are increasing asthma triggers. So, for example, heat waves, we know that climate change is increasing the severity and frequency of heat waves. Well, heat is an asthma trigger for people who have asthma. Same with forest fires. Climate change can increase the frequency and severity of fires in certain areas of the world. And the smoke that comes from forest fires, that can travel hundreds of miles. Yes. And when it's inhaled into the lungs, that can trigger symptoms in people who have asthma.
Okay, and Charmaine, let me come to you. Now, as a mom, of course, it's something to be concerned with. Now, people talk about climate change and doing something about it. What is done here in the United States on the federal level that perhaps can be replicated in other countries?
Well, I think, and just to say, not only am I a mom, but I'm also one who does have asthma, as well as children who have asthma. Okay. So as we look at the federal level, some of the policies and proposals that are in place or that members of Congress and our administration are working on deal with, particularly from an air standpoint, where we're talking about renewable energy, where we're talking about bringing in wind and solar power to help with our electricity grids. In addition to, with biomass is another issue that's being discussed at the federal level in regards to whether do we, able to burn biomass and able to utilize that as a source of electricity. And then also, as Molly mentioned, when we're talking about extreme weather patterns and we're talking about drought, even states like California who are dealing with, large issues as far as drought, and when you're dealing with just the dust and the particles that travel, and really, as a state, really, how are they looking to do things to combat the kind of the secondary issues of climate change?
And the effect of climate change is definitely a global issue that people have talked about. So how can individuals influence lawmakers, whether it's in the United States and even in other countries?
So climate change is a big issue. So individual actions are important at your home and community level, but we feel very strongly that climate change has to be addressed at the large scale, and that takes political involvement and engagement. So at Moms Clean Air Force, we help moms across the country learn about the issue and then help them connect with their lawmakers and policymakers, simply to say that they have a stake in this issue as parents, as families, and they want to see solutions. So moms want to see solutions. There are solutions available. We need to create the political will for that to happen.
And speaking of solutions, how can people be part of the solutions, whether they're patients, family, physicians, educators? Charmaine, what can you tell us in terms of small actions that people can take?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, even from us as a patient advocacy organization, our goal is to educate the folks that we are representing, those that have asthma and allergies, from the sense of just really what is climate change? How, again, like you mentioned, how can you be impactful in your communities, in your schools, and whether that's, looking for ways to be more energy efficient, looking for ways to curb just, your transportation modes as far as carbon emissions into the atmosphere, and finding other alternative modes of transportation like transit options. Okay. But more importantly, just helping them engage with their local lawmakers, and really kind of bringing those issues to the forefront locally in their communities with their state and county representatives, where it can then transpose itself at the federal level.
Okay, thank you so much. We have to leave it there, ladies. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was Molly Raj, Public Policy Director of Moms Clean Air Force, and Charmaine Anderson, Director of Advocacy, Allergy and Asthma Network. And that's your health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Vincent?
Well, thanks a lot. And I'll be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health report every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Well, in part 2 of our series, Ghana, Our Ocean, fishermen in West Africa are demanding a crackdown on illegal fishing to protect their livelihoods. Representatives from Ghana outlined their action plan at the 3rd annual Our Ocean conference held recently here in Washington. Here's VOA Caroline Turner.
West Africa is one of the world's richest fisheries grounds. For 7 million people living near the sea, fishing has been a way of life for centuries. But in recent years, illegal fishing has cut fishing stocks in half, forcing fishermen to travel further out to sea to catch enough to make a living and destroying their way of life. Authorities and fishermen in the region blame foreign vessels, which catch fish in off-limits waters and launder their catch by offloading it onto refrigerated vessels.
We used to get a lot of fish, but the sound of motors from the big vessels have chased away the fish.
West African authorities say along the coast, from Senegal to Nigeria, illegal fishing amounts to up to $1.5 billion worth of fish taken each year. The overfishing cuts fish stocks in half and slashes tax revenues to cash-strapped nations. Ghana's fishing sector earns over $1 billion a year. It contributes 4.5% to the country's gross domestic product and employs 2.4 million people, about 10% of the population. Fish contribute about 60% of Ghana's protein intake. At the third annual Our Ocean Conference in Washington, Ghana's Minister for Fisheries urged the international audience to help stop illegal fishing.
Ghana has experienced a steady decline in the fish landed from ocean fisheries for some time now. Improving our management of fisheries and fishing are critical to our socio-economic development. The well-being of shared oceans is linked directly to that of communities that depend on aquatic resources. We find IUU as a human rights issue. It's a crime against humanity. It's a crime against our people.
Although governments in the region have launched several initiatives to curb illegal fishing, such as marine patrols and improved satellite technology, challenges remain, especially resources for training and enforcement. Ghana plans to increase tariffs.
In Ghana now, for example, violations attract a minimum penalty of $1 million and a maximum fine of $4 million. In 2013, we established the Fisheries Management Unit with personnel drawn from the Fisheries Ministry, Ghana Navy, and Marine Police. The FUU coordinates enforcement of the fisheries laws in Ghana, which has led to a marked reduction in fisheries infraction.
By establishing watch committees and involving artisan fishermen, Ghana is enforcing environmental laws and working with 6 countries to establish West African tax codes to protect the fisheries resources. Over the next 5 years, Ghana plans to reduce fishing and support rebuilding fish stock and improve information and enforcement to protect the marine habitat. Here in the seaside city of Elmina in Ghana, it seems like too little, too late.
Our parents sent us to school through the money they earned from selling fish. That's how we also make a living. But now we face poverty because of a lack of fish at sea.
Analysts say once these challenges in the fishing industry are addressed, it will create jobs, boost revenues and incentives for young people to stay in the region, which will in turn reduce mass migration and youth unemployment. Carolyn Turner, VOA News, Washington.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, how a Chinese construction worker achieved work-time workout fame. We'll be right back.
Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Jesus ne.
Chibok.
Ba a yi tsammani ba, kuma insha Allah za mu iya kubutar da su.
Whatever you want to regulate is what we create.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. It's just another 10-hour day for construction worker She Mui. But over the past year, the 23-year-old migrant worker has made an unexpected leap into achieving internet fame thanks to the self-taught fitness routines he has taken to practicing on site. During his lunch break, she swiftly pulls himself up into the scaffolding. Then he swings into action, performing a high bar routine as his cousin films from multiple angles using various smartphones. With his lean build and six-pack, she has now attracted over 1 million followers on Kuaishou, that's a mobile video app in China. Plus, he's already been invited to perform on several major Chinese talent shows. Well, next up, we expect models to be perfectly groomed, but looking this flawless takes time. At the London Beauty Show, one exhibit features a demonstration of a possible solution for busy beauty junkies. Permanent makeup, also known as micropigmentation or cosmetic tattooing, it's considered a hassle-free alternative to applying eyebrow pencil, eyeliner or lip liner every day. It's used particularly by older women, as eyebrows can become thin and lips can lose their definition with age. Results have become far more natural, but their treatments are expensive and risky. Well, and finally, 3D technology has taken Indonesia by storm in recent years. And now, with the arrival of more affordable equipment, people are finding more commercial ways to use the technology. Sugar Cube Studio claims to be the country's first digital company that offers personalized 3D printing to document people's lives, allowing ordinary Indonesians to make miniatures of themselves. Once the client has approved the final look, a 3D printer processes each layer from the bottom up. Relying on Instagram and word of mouth, the studio now brings in an average monthly revenue of $5,400. And that is what is trending today. Well, and that's our show for today. Now, be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings today, Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us here in Washington. Have a good night.
I'm Sonny Young from the sunny side of sports, and this is VOA. Follow us on Africa 54. Go to facebook.com/VOA Africa 54.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words.
This word deals with legal issues and travel.
Extradited.
Security officials say many young militants are inspired by Muslim cleric Abu Qatada, who was extradited from Britain last year. Jordan's postponed his trial on charges of plotting to attack tourists at New Year celebrations in 2000, but previously convicted him for conspiring to attack U.S. targets in Jordan.
Extradited means to move a prisoner between two countries. Sometimes a person commits a crime in one country and escapes to another.
If the person is found, police can send him back to the country where he committed the crime, and he could face a trial. Now, when you hear the word extradited, you will know what this news word means.